Millionaire CEO needed a fake wife for his sister's wedding, then saw the woman he couldn't forget. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. The rain had just started to fall over Manhattan, streaking the glass walls of the Carter Tower like silver threads. Inside the penthouse office on the 54th floor, Adrian Carter sat alone at a massive mahogany desk, his suit jacket tossed carelessly over the back of his chair. The city glittered below him, restless, alive, but his eyes weren't on the skyline. They were fixed on the glowing phone in his hand, on the text his younger sister had just sent. "Can't wait for you to bring your wife to my wedding. Everyone's excited to meet her." Adrian exhaled slowly, his jaw tightening. His sister believed he was already married. It had been a white lie, something he told her months ago, just to deflect her constant worry about his empty personal life. But now, with the wedding only 3 weeks away, the lie had cornered him. He needed someone by his side, not just a date, a wife. A sharp knock broke his thoughts. His assistant, Claire, peeked in. "Sir, the press wants confirmation of your RSVP to the Langford wedding." Adrian rubbed his temples. "Tell them I'll attend with my wife." Claire hesitated. "But, sir, I'll find someone." Adrian cut her off, his voice firm, though inside he felt the ground slipping. Adrian Carter never begged, never improvised. He built empires on precision. But tonight, under the steady drum of rain, he was about to make the most reckless proposition of his life. Across town, in a cramped cafe that smelled of burnt espresso and wet coats, Maya Brooks wiped down a table with a frayed rag. The neon sign outside flickered weakly, half the letters burned out. She glanced at the clock. Almost midnight. Her shift was nearly over, but her body ached as if she'd been running a marathon. Rent was due in 5 days. Tuition bills sat unopened in her backpack, like ghosts she couldn't shake. A customer dropped a tip in her jar, 3 crumpled singles. Maya smiled faintly, murmuring thanks, though her chest felt heavy. She dreamed of designing fashion, of sketching dresses that would walk real runways. But those dreams had been pushed further and further away. For now, she worked double shifts, poured coffee, and hoped tomorrow wouldn't collapse on her. As she scrubbed the last table, the cafe door swung open. A tall man stepped inside, his umbrella dripping rain, his tailored suit still immaculate despite the storm. He didn't belong here. Not in this dim, cracked tile cafe where the regulars wore thrift store jackets and carried change in plastic bags. He belonged to the other side of the city, the polished marble lobbies, the glittering charity galas. Maya froze with the rag in her hand. Their eyes met for half a second. His gaze was piercing, cool, but not unkind. Then he walked toward her table with the confidence of someone who always knew he'd be obeyed. "Miss Brooks?" His voice was deep, steady, certain. She blinked. "Do I know you?" The man set a leather folder on the table. The golden Carter Enterprises logo gleamed under the cafe's buzzing fluorescent light. "My name is Adrian Carter," he said. "I need a wife, a temporary one." Maya almost laughed. The words were too absurd, too theatrical. "Excuse me?" Adrian slid the folder closer. Inside lay a crisp document, pages of typed clauses, signatures, lines waiting, a contract. "I'll be direct," he continued. "My sister is getting married in 3 weeks. She believes I already have a wife. If I appear without one, it will complicate things. I need someone to play the role. For 1 month, you'll be compensated generously." Maya's throat went dry. She looked down at her flour-stained apron, her chipped nails, then back at the man whose watch probably cost more than her entire rent for the year. "This is insane," she whispered. "Why me?" Adrian studied her for a long moment. Rain rattled against the window, filling the silence between them. Finally, he said, "Because you don't belong to my world. That makes you believable. No one would think you're in it for the spotlight." Maya's laugh cracked, bitter. "You mean because I look poor?" His jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. "Because you look real." She shook her head, stepping back. I don't know what kind of joke this is, but I'll pay off your tuition, Adrian cut in sharply. And your back rent. His eyes flicked briefly toward her backpack, slumped in the corner. You've been dodging eviction notices. I can fix that. 1 month. Pretend to be my wife. Attend a few events. Stand by my side at the wedding. After that, you'll never have to see me again. Maya's heart pounded so loud she almost didn't hear the rain anymore. Her entire body screamed at her to walk away, but the weight of debt and exhaustion pinned her feet to the floor. She thought of the landlord's threats, the unopened bills, the pile of sketches she hid under her bed. What's the catch? She asked finally, her voice a whisper. Adrian opened the contract, flipping to a page where neat bullet points were typed in bold. 5 rules. You'll attend 5 events as my wife. You won't discuss this arrangement with anyone. You won't interfere with my business. You'll keep separate rooms. And, his eyes met hers, sharper now, you will not fall in love with me. Oh, Maya stared at him, stunned. Arrogant much? His lips twitched in the faintest ghost of a smile. I prefer realistic. She shook her head, backing away again. This is crazy. I don't even know you. Then take the night to decide, Adrian said calmly. He tucked the contract back into the folder, set it neatly on the table, and placed a gleaming black card on top. My number's there. Call me if you want out of your problems. Or burn it, if you'd rather keep scrubbing tables at midnight. Oh, with that, he turned and walked out, the doorbell chiming faintly behind him. The storm swallowed him into the night. Maya stood frozen, her rag dripping onto the floor, her heart racing faster than it ever had in her life. She whispered to herself, what the hell just happened? And in that question, her life had already begun to change. The folder sat on Maya's nightstand like it was alive, breathing, waiting for her to touch it. She hadn't opened it, not once, but its presence haunted her as she tossed in bed, the leaking radiator hissing in the corner of her tiny apartment. The rain hadn't stopped. It drummed on the thin roof, seeped through the cracked window frame, filled the room with a damp chill. She pulled her blanket tighter, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word Adrian Carter had said. A wife. Just for a month. Tuition. Rent. The words looped, tempting and terrifying. She had Googled him on her cracked phone before the battery died, CEO of Carter Enterprises, one of the youngest self-made millionaires in New York. The kind of man who appeared in glossy magazines, shaking hands with senators, photographed on yachts. And now he wanted her a broke waitress to pretend to be his wife. Maya laughed bitterly into the darkness. Yeah, right. That makes perfect sense. But when morning came, reality was colder than the night. She stopped by the diner before class, only to find her manager waiting with folded arms. Maya, I'm sorry. Hours are getting cut. Business is slow. I can't give you the shifts you asked for. Her stomach dropped. But I need them. I can't afford, he sighed. I like you, kid, but I can't pay staff I don't need. By noon, she was sitting on the campus steps, staring at a tuition notice printed in bold red. Final deadline. The numbers swam in her vision. She had maybe $70 to her name. Not enough for rent, not enough for tuition, not enough for anything. The black card burned in her pocket like it was whispering. By the time the sun sank, she was dialing the number. Her voice shook when he answered. It's Maya. I'll do it. The next evening, a sleek black town car pulled up in front of her building, so out of place against the cracked sidewalk and graffiti-tagged brick walls. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains as Maya stepped out in her scuffed sneakers, clutching her worn backpack. The chauffeur opened the door. Miss Brooks. Inside, Adrian sat waiting, flawless as ever in a charcoal suit. No tie, but the watch on his wrist gleamed like a second sun. He studied her with the same steady eyes as before. You've decided. Maya crossed her arms, defensive. Don't make it sound like I had a choice. Adrian didn't flinch. There's always a choice. You made yours. The car slid through Manhattan traffic, the city lights smearing against the tinted windows. Maya kept her gaze fixed outside, counting traffic lights, refusing to meet his eyes. Did you read the contract? He asked. He skimmed it. Skimmed. His tone was dry, as though she'd admitted to signing away her soul with a doodle. I know the rules. She recited them flatly. 5 events, separate rooms, no interfering with your business. Keep quiet. And no. She trailed off, heat rising in her cheeks. No falling in love. The corner of his mouth twitched. You remembered that one. Hard to forget when it's so arrogant. Arrogant, Adrian echoed softly. Or practical? Maya rolled her eyes, hugging her backpack like a shield. Whatever you say, Mr. Carter. The car pulled into an underground garage, smooth concrete gleaming under white lights. When the elevator doors slid open, Maya stepped into a world that felt like a movie set. Adrian's penthouse stretched before her like a private museum, glass walls framing the skyline. Marble floors polished enough to see her reflection. Abstract paintings worth more than her entire street hanging carelessly on the walls. She stood frozen, her sneakers squeaking faintly on the marble. This place is insane. And Adrian's expression didn't change. It's practical. Practical? She let out a sharp laugh. You could fit my whole building inside your kitchen. He ignored her, striding toward the dining table. A folder already lay open, papers neatly arranged. We'll finalize this now. Maya followed reluctantly, every instinct screaming she was out of her depth. She sat across from him, the city glittering behind his silhouette. Sign here, Adrian said, tapping the page. This secures the agreement. Once you do, your debts will be cleared by the end of the week. Her hand hovered over the pen. The numbers printed on the page made her chest tight. Tuition, rent, medical bills her mother had left behind. They would all vanish with a single signature. But her pride clawed at her. Why me? She asked again, softer this time. Out of everyone you could have picked, models, actresses, women who know how to live in your world. Adrian studied her for a long moment. His voice, when it came, was even. Because they'd play the part. You won't. You'll just be. Her chest tightened. It wasn't a compliment, not really, but it disarmed her more than flattery ever could. She signed. Adrian slid the folder away, satisfied. Good. The first event is Friday night. My sister's engagement dinner. You'll have a stylist here tomorrow. A stylist? You can't walk in wearing that. His eyes flicked briefly at her thrifted jeans and hoodie. Maya bristled. There's nothing wrong with my clothes. Not for here, Adrian said calmly. But not for there. The following afternoon, the penthouse buzzed with strangers. A stylist spread dresses across the sofa like rainbow silks. A makeup artist unpacked brushes. A hairdresser plugged in curling irons. Maya sat stiffly in a chair, cheeks hot, while strangers circled her like she was clay to be molded. Adrian watched from the doorway, arms folded. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes never left her. When the stylist held up a shimmering navy gown, Maya shook her head. Number? Too much. I'd look like I'm drowning. Try it, Adrian said quietly. I said no. The stylist hesitated, glancing at Adrian. For a moment, Maya expected him to insist. But instead, he nodded. Then pick one you like. Her fingers brushed a simple black dress, elegant but modest. The kind of dress that didn't scream money, but whispered it. She held it up, expecting disapproval. Adrian gave a short nod. That one. Maya blinked, startled. Really? It suits you, he said, and walked away. Friday night arrived. The engagement dinner glowed under chandeliers in a Fifth Avenue ballroom. Guests shimmered in gowns and tuxedos, laughter chiming like silver. Maya clutched Adrian's arm as cameras flashed outside, her heart pounding so loud she barely heard the reporters shouting his name. Inside, she felt every eye turn. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Who is she? Where did he find her? At the head table, Adrian's sister lit up with delight. Oh my God, you're gorgeous! She pulled Maya into a hug before Maya could react. Adrian, you didn't tell me she was this stunning. Maya flushed, stammering thanks. For a moment, warmth spread in her chest. Maybe she could do this. But then came the first cut. A woman across the table, dripping diamonds, leaned in with a sugary smile. And what do you do, dear? Maya froze. The truth, I pour coffee and scrub tables, would be a loaded gun in this room, but lying stuck in her throat. I work in a cafe, she said finally. The woman's smile sharpened. How charming. Her eyes slid to Adrian, sparkling with amusement. A waitress, really? Heat rose in Maya's chest, shame curling like smoke. But before she could sink, Adrian spoke. She's not just a waitress. The room stilled. Adrian's voice was cool, commanding. the tone of a man used to silencing boardrooms. She runs a cafe that keeps half the block alive. She knows every customer's name. She works harder than anyone here, myself included. So if you call that charming, his gaze cut like a blade, I call it admirable. Maya's breath caught. He hadn't planned that. He hadn't needed to say it. But he did. For her, the woman's smile faltered. Conversation picked up again, but Maya sat in stunned silence, her heart hammering. For the first time since signing that contract, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, there was more behind Adrian Carter's perfect mask than she realized, and she was terrified of what it might mean. The chandeliers dimmed as the waitstaff cleared dessert plates, their silver trays glinting like armor under the soft light. Maya sat stiffly at the long dining table, her hands folded too neatly in her lap, her knuckles pale. She felt as though she had been holding her breath for hours. The evening had been a blur: champagne toasts, polite laughter, probing questions from strangers whose smiles were knives in disguise. But Adrian's words still echoed in her chest. She works harder than anyone here, myself included. He hadn't needed to defend her, yet he had. When the orchestra began a slow waltz, couples rose to the dance floor. Maya shrank into her chair, but Adrian leaned close. His cologne clean, sharp, with a hint of cedar brushed against her senses. "Come with me." Her eyes widened. "What?" "Number." "I'll trip. I'll ruin everything." Adrian's gaze held hers, steady, unyielding. "Trust me." Oh, before she could protest, he was already leading her onto the marble floor. Dozens of eyes followed. Maya's palms grew damp, her heart pounding. But when his hand closed firmly around hers, the world quieted. The music swelled. He guided her with precision, each step anchored by his control. She stumbled once, twice, but his grip never wavered. "You're trembling," Adrian murmured. "Because this is insane," she whispered back, breathless. A rare smile flickered at the corner of his mouth. "You're doing fine." For a fleeting moment, under the chandeliers and the gaze of 100 strangers, she forgot the contract, the rules, the lies. She was just a woman dancing with a man whose presence consumed every corner of her awareness. When the music ended, applause rippled. Adrian bowed slightly, still holding her hand as though reluctant to let go. Maya's cheeks burned. She wanted to run, yet some stubborn part of her wanted the song to never end. Later, as the car hummed back toward the penthouse, silence pressed heavy between them. Maya stared out the window at the blur of neon signs and rain-slick streets. "You didn't have to say those things back there," she said finally, her voice low. Adrian's reflection in the glass barely moved. They were true. Her throat tightened. She hated the way her chest warmed at his words. Hated that she wanted to believe him. "Don't," she muttered. "Don't what?" "Don't make this harder. This is just business." Adrian turned his head then, his eyes unreadable in the dim cabin light. Of course, just business. But the silence that followed felt like a lie neither of them could admit. The next morning, Maya padded barefoot into the penthouse kitchen, her hair a wild mess, her oversized sweatshirt sliding off one shoulder. She had forgotten where she was for a moment, forgotten that her home was now a palace in the clouds. Adrian was already there, crisp in a tailored shirt, sipping black coffee as if the world revolved at his pace. He looked up, and for the first time, his perfect composure cracked just slightly. "You look," his brow furrowed, as though searching for the right word. "Disastrous?" she offered. "Human," he said simply. Maya blinked, startled. She busied herself with pouring cereal, anything to escape the weight of his gaze. But his word clung to her. Human. Days blurred into a strange routine. Fittings with the stylist, etiquette lessons, endless reminders from Adrian's assistant Claire about what to say, how to stand, when to smile. Maya fought the lessons with stubborn jokes, but secretly, she soaked them in. At night, when the cameras and strangers disappeared, she returned to her tiny guest room in the penthouse. Sometimes, she would hear Adrian pacing the hallways, restless even in his own empire. One night, unable to sleep, she stepped onto the balcony. The city stretched below like a sea of stars. And there he was, leaning against the railing, his tie undone, his expression carved in shadow. She hesitated, then joined him. For a moment, they stood in silence, the wind tugging at her hair. "Do you ever get tired of it?" she asked softly. "Of what?" "All this." She gestured at the skyline. "The money, the expectations, the performance." Adrian's jaw tightened. "It isn't a performance." "Really?" She pressed gently. "Because sometimes it feels like you're playing a role, same as me." His eyes darkened, but not with anger. "Maybe I am." Maya turned toward him, surprised at the raw honesty in his tone. "So, who are you when no one's watching?" For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then he exhaled, his gaze dropping to the streets far below. "A man who doesn't sleep. A man who builds walls so high, even he can't see over them." Oh, her chest ached at the quiet confession. She wanted to reach for him, to say something that would lighten the weight in his voice. Instead, she whispered, "Sounds lonely." Adrian's eyes met hers, sharp and searching. It islanded. The space between them hummed with something unspoken. She felt it in her chest, in her fingertips, in the way the night air seemed to still. She stepped back first, retreating into the safety of her room before she could do something reckless. The second public event came a week later, a gala for the Carter Foundation. Cameras lined the red carpet, flashes exploding like fireworks. Adrian stood tall, flawless, while Maya clutched his arm, her borrowed gown shimmering under the lights. They posed, they smiled, they played the part. But inside, Maya's nerves twisted. She remembered the contract, no falling in love. And yet, when Adrian leaned down between photo ops, his lips brushing close to her ear, she shivered. "You're doing well," he murmured. Her pulse stuttered. She forced a smile for the cameras. "Don't encourage me." But the warmth in his voice lingered long after the flashes faded. Later that night, after the gala, they found themselves alone in the penthouse once more. The city sprawled below, silent and glittering. Adrian poured 2 glasses of wine, handing one to her. "To survival," he said dryly. Maya laughed softly, the tension easing. "To survival." They clinked glasses. For a fleeting moment, the contract felt distant, irrelevant. For a fleeting moment, she wondered if the lie they lived together was beginning to carve itself into truth. But deep down, she knew truth and lies had a way of colliding, and when they did, nothing would ever be the same. The week of the Langford wedding drew closer, and with it came the third test of their arrangement. Adrian's calendar was filled with dinners, business meetings, and society events, each one demanding Maya's presence at his side. She had learned how to smile without trembling, how to lift her chin when eyes judged her, how to make small talk with people who didn't believe she belonged. But no amount of practice prepared her for the charity board meeting held inside the Carter Enterprises headquarters. The boardroom was all glass and steel, the table polished so sharply she could see her reflection. Men and women in suits shifted papers, whispered, and studied her with the clinical interest of surgeons inspecting a specimen. Maya sat beside Adrian, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her dress simple but dignified. The chairman cleared his throat. "Mr. Carter, this is unusual. Bringing your wife into a board meeting?" Adrian's voice was calm, steady. "She belongs here." Whispers broke out. Maya's cheeks flushed, her instincts screaming to shrink. But Adrian didn't flinch. He continued the meeting as if their eyes weren't knives, as if her presence wasn't questioned at every turn. When the meeting adjourned, one of the directors approached her. His smile was polite, but his words were sharp. "I hope you understand, Mrs. Carter. This company isn't a stage for experiments." Before Maya could respond, Adrian stepped in. His tone cut through the man's words like a blade. "She is not an experiment. She is my wife. Treat her as such." "Abo," the man faltered, retreating with a mumbled apology. Adrian's hand pressed gently against the small of Maya's back as he guided her out of the room. She said nothing, but her heart raced. For all his arrogance, Adrian had defended her again, and this time, it wasn't for the cameras. That night, the penthouse was quiet. Maya sat on the balcony with her sketchbook, the city glowing beneath her. Her pencil traced lines almost without thought, a gown with sweeping curves, delicate stitching, the kind of design she once dreamed of seeing on runways. "You draw," She startled, looking up. Adrian leaned against the doorway, tie loosened, sleeves rolled. "It's nothing," she said quickly, closing the book. He stepped closer. "Show me." Oh. Her instinct was to refuse, to guard this fragile piece of herself. But something in his voice, softer than usual, made her pause. Slowly, she opened the sketchbook. Adrian studied the lines, the details she had poured herself into. His expression didn't change, but his eyes softened. "You're talented," she laughed bitterly. "Talent doesn't pay rent." "Maybe not," he said, "but it shouldn't go to waste." Oh. The way he said it so certain, so matter-of-fact, sent a strange warmth through her chest. She closed the sketchbook quickly, afraid of how much his words mattered. Days later, the rehearsal dinner loomed. The ballroom glittered with lights, guests swirling in gowns and tuxedos. Adrian stood beside Maya, his hand steady at her waist. She could feel the weight of every stare, every whisper. It happened in an instant. A familiar figure approached a woman, tall, poised, draped in emerald silk. Her eyes locked onto Adrian with a mixture of ownership and challenge. "Adrian." Her voice dripped with old intimacy. "It's been too long." Maya stiffened. The woman's gaze flicked to her, lips curling in a smile that wasn't kind. "And this must be your wife." "Yes," Adrian said smoothly. "Maya." The woman extended her hand, her nails sharp as her smile. "I'm Victoria, old friend of Adrian's." Maya shook her hand, forcing a polite smile. But Victoria leaned closer, her voice low enough only Maya could hear. "Enjoy it while it lasts, dear. Adrian has always been temporary." Heat burned in Maya's chest, a mix of anger and doubt. But Adrian's arm tightened around her, his expression unreadable as he steered her away. When they were alone, Maya pulled back. Who was she? "Someone who doesn't matter." "Doesn't matter?" Her voice cracked. "She looked at me like I was nothing." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Because she thinks everyone is nothing. Don't let her get to you." But Maya couldn't shake the sting. She wasn't nothing but standing beside Adrian. In this glittering world that wasn't hers, she couldn't help but feel small. That night, back at the penthouse, Maya couldn't sleep. She wandered into the kitchen for water, only to find Adrian there, staring out at the skyline with a glass in his hand. She hesitated, then spoke. "Why me, really? Was it just convenience? Or did you pick me because you knew no one would believe in me?" His gaze shifted to her, intense, unflinching. "I picked you because you were real. Because when you walked into that cafe, you didn't look at me like I was a headline or a paycheck. You looked at me like I was a man." Her breath caught. For a long moment, the world stilled. The air between them felt charged, fragile. But then he stepped back, setting his glass down. His mask slipped back into place. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be harder." Maya stood frozen as he walked past, her heart pounding. She hated how much his words shook her, how much she wanted to believe them. The next evening, disaster struck. The engagement dinner was in full swing when whispers spread like fire. Phones buzzed, screens lit up. A headline appeared across news feeds. "Adrian Carter's marriage exposed. Sources claim it's all a contract." The room shifted, eyes turning, voices rising. Victoria smirked from across the table, her satisfaction undeniable. Maya's blood ran cold. She turned to Adrian, panic in her chest. "They know!" Adrian's face was stone. "Stay calm." But calm was impossible. Cameras were already flashing, guests murmuring, the story spreading faster than either of them could contain. And in that moment, Maya knew the contract had been their shield, but now it was their noose. The walls of Adrian's perfect world were closing in, and she was trapped inside with him. What she didn't know was that the storm had only just begun. The ballroom spun with whispers, each one sharper than the clink of crystal glasses. Maya stood frozen beside Adrian, her pulse hammering. Screens across the room glowed with the same headline. "Adrian Carter's wife. Is fake contract marriage scandal rock society gala." The air thickened. Guests leaned closer to one another, murmuring, eyes darting toward Maya, as though she were a circus act exposed. Victoria's smirk glowed like poison from across the room. She sipped her champagne slowly, savoring the chaos. Maya's throat went dry. "Adrian, what do we do?" Adrian's hand pressed firmly against the small of her back, steady, grounding. His voice was calm, but his jaw was steel. "We don't run. Running makes you guilty." Before Maya could respond, a man approached one of Adrian's board members, gray hair slicked back, expression like stone. "Is it true?" His words cut through the music. "Is this marriage a contract?" Every eye turned. Adrian straightened, his frame commanding, his tone sharp. "Number." The room stilled. "This is my wife," Adrian continued, voice carrying across the hall. "Anyone who suggests otherwise insults me and her." But Maya could feel the tension rippling through the crowd. The denial hadn't silenced them. It had only stoked the fire. When the dinner ended, Adrian whisked her into the car, cameras flashing wildly as they left. Maya sat stiff, her hands twisted in her lap. Her voice broke in the quiet. "It's over, isn't it? They know. They'll tear us apart." Adrian's gaze was fixed on the storm-soaked streets outside. "Let them try. You can't fight the entire press." His eyes flicked to her then, dark and unyielding. "I can fight anyone." Maya wanted to believe him, but her chest ached, because for the first time since signing that contract, she realized the truth. This wasn't just business anymore. And if the world ripped it apart, it wouldn't only be his empire that crumbled. It would be her heart. The next morning, the scandal hit harder. Newspapers screamed with accusations. Tabloids ran cruel headlines, and stock tickers blinked red. Adrian's phone buzzed endlessly, his assistant Claire fielding calls with clipped urgency. Inside the penthouse, Maya curled on the sofa, scrolling through venomous comments on her cracked phone. Gold digger, fraud, actress. Each word stabbed deeper. When Adrian walked in, she turned the screen toward him. "Do you see this? They're ripping me apart. They think I'm worthless." He crossed the room swiftly, plucked the phone from her hand, and set it face down on the table. "Stop reading it." "How can I stop?" she snapped, her voice trembling. "It's everywhere. I can't hide. I can't even breathe." Adrian crouched in front of her then, his eyes burning into hers. "You are not worthless. You never were." Her throat tightened. "Then why does it feel like I'm drowning in your world?" He didn't answer right away. His hand brushed lightly against hers, hesitant, almost tender. "Because my world is broken," he said finally. "And I brought you into the fire with me." Maya blinked back tears. She wanted to pull away. Instead, she whispered, "Then maybe I should leave." Something flickered across his face, fear, raw and unguarded. But he masked it quickly, standing tall again. "If that's what you want?" She stared up at him, stunned. "You just let me go?" His voice was tight. "If it kept you safe." The words cracked something inside her. She turned away, unable to look at him. Days blurred. Adrian fought wars in boardrooms, silencing whispers, forcing stability into chaos. Maya stayed in the penthouse, feeling like a prisoner behind glass walls. One evening, she wandered into the study, its shelves lined with leather-bound volumes, its desk cluttered with files. A single photograph sat in a silver frame, Adrian as a boy, his parents smiling behind him, his sister clinging to his arm. She picked it up, tracing the outline of the child's grin. For the first time, she saw Adrian not as the untouchable CEO, but as a boy who once had a family before tragedy carved him into stone. "You shouldn't be in here." She turned. Adrian stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "I was just—" She held up the frame. "They look kind." His jaw tightened. "They were, until they weren't." Maya frowned. "What do you mean?" Adrian stepped into the room, his eyes shadowed. "My father built this empire, but it was never enough. He wanted perfection, discipline, no weakness. When I took over, I swore I'd never be like him. And yet," he gestured toward the skyline, his voice hard, "here I am, cold, alone, lying to the only family I have left." Her heart ached. Slowly, she set the frame back on the desk. "You're not cold. Not really." His eyes snapped to hers, sharp, searching. "You don't know me." "I know enough." Her voice was firm, though her hands shook. "I know the man who defended me in front of strangers. The man who sees people, even when he doesn't want to. That's who you are, Adrian, not the mask." The air between them pulsed, charged. For one suspended moment, he looked at her like she was the only person who had ever truly seen him. And then, As if realizing it too, he stepped back. Get some rest. Tomorrow's the wedding. The morning of the wedding broke with pale light over the city. Maya dressed in silence, the contract heavy in her mind. The end was near. She would play the role one last time, smile for the cameras, stand beside him at the altar where his sister would vow forever. But forever wasn't theirs, not according to the rules. When the car arrived, Adrian helped her inside. His hand lingered on hers longer than necessary. Neither of them spoke as the city blurred past. At the cathedral, reporters swarmed, flashes erupting as they stepped out. Adrian's hand was steady on her back, his mask flawless. Together, they walked the marble aisle, the whispers rising around them like a tide. Maya lifted her chin, her chest tight. She had survived humiliation before. She could survive this. But when Adrian's sister turned and beamed at her, when she pulled Maya into a hug and whispered, "I've never seen my brother look at someone the way he looks at you," her heart cracked. Because in that moment, Maya realized she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was falling. Against every rule, against every warning. She was falling in love with Adrian Carter. And love, she knew, was the one thing their contract had forbidden. The cathedral glowed with golden light, music swelling as guests settled into pews draped in white flowers. Maya sat at Adrian's side, her heart pounding in rhythm with the organ's notes. His sister moved gracefully down the aisle, radiant, while whispers about him and his fake wife swirled like smoke through the crowd. Maya kept her smile fixed, but every muscle in her body ached from the strain. She could feel eyes cutting into her, dissecting her presence, waiting for her to slip. When the vows began, Adrian leaned slightly closer. His voice was low, almost hidden under the music. "Stay with me, just a little longer." Her throat tightened. "And then what?" He didn't answer. His gaze stayed forward, mask unbroken, but his hand brushed against hers for the briefest second. It was nothing, and it was everything. The ceremony ended in applause, the couple sealed with a kiss. Guests rose, clapping, tears glistening in their eyes. But for Maya, the joy in the room only deepened the ache inside her. This was real. Their love, their vows. And beside her, everything between her and Adrian was built on lies and signatures. At the reception, the ballroom glittered with chandeliers, tables groaning under champagne flutes and towers of desserts. Music swirled as guests danced. Maya found herself cornered by Victoria once more, her smile sharper than any blade. "You play the role well," Victoria purred. "But don't fool yourself. Adrian isn't capable of love. He'll discard you the moment you outlive your use." Maya's chest tightened. She wanted to walk away, but Victoria's words burrowed deep, echoing all her worst fears. When she finally returned to Adrian's side, her expression was brittle. He studied her for a long moment, as though he could see the cracks beneath her smile. But he said nothing. Hours later, when the music softened and guests drifted toward carriages and cars, Adrian led her out into the garden. The night was cool, lanterns glowing among the trees. Crickets hummed faintly in the dark. Maya crossed her arms. "Why did you bring me out here?" Adrian's face was shadowed, unreadable. "Because I need you to hear this from me, not from them." Her heart stuttered. "Hear what?" He exhaled, the first hint of hesitation she'd ever seen crack through his armor. "I didn't plan this. I didn't plan you. But when I saw you in that cafe, when you looked at me without seeing the headlines, without the empire, I knew you could play the part. What I didn't expect was," he stopped, his jaw tightening, "that the part would stop feeling like a part." Maya's breath caught. "Adrian." But before she could speak more, the sound of a camera shutter snapped from the hedges. Paparazzi burst from the shadows, flashes exploding. Questions flew like knives. "Is it true? Is the marriage fake? Did you pay her?" Adrian stepped in front of her instantly, shielding her with his body. His voice was thunder. "Enough! This is private property. Leave now or I'll have every one of you arrested." Security swarmed, forcing the reporters back. But the damage was done. Maya's hands shook, her chest tight with panic. Adrian turned to her, his eyes fierce. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, but tears burned her vision. "I can't do this. I can't be your shield, your story, your lie. I thought I could, but I can't." His face hardened. Maya? Number. Her voice cracked. This was supposed to be business. Safe. But it isn't safe. Not for me. The silence that followed was suffocating. Finally, she whispered, I think I need to leave. Adrian's expression didn't falter, but she saw it the flash of pain, sharp and fleeting, before he nodded once. As you wish. Oh, and just like that, the distance between them became wider than the night sky above. The morning after the wedding, the city felt different to Maya. Colder, unforgiving. She stuffed clothes into her worn backpack, hands shaking as she zipped it shut. The penthouse around her loomed like a palace made of glass and marble, too big, too pristine, too far from the world she belonged to. Every corner of it echoed with Adrian's presence. His suits lined like soldiers in the closet, the faint scent of cedar clinging to the air, the silence that felt heavier now that she was leaving. Claire, Adrian's assistant, appeared at the doorway. Her usual composure was laced with unease. Miss Brooks, are you sure? Walking away now, it'll only feed the tabloids. Maya lifted the strap of her backpack onto her shoulder. They already think I'm a fraud. Staying will just prove them right. Oh, Claire hesitated, as if she wanted to say more, but then she simply nodded. I'll arrange a car. Maya shook her head. Don't bother, I'll take the subway. The words hurt more than she expected, like admitting she had never belonged here in the first place. Meanwhile, Adrian stood in the boardroom of Carter Enterprises, the skyline behind him like a wall of glass fire. The board members whispered heatedly, phones buzzing with alerts, stock numbers flickering red across screens. One of the directors slammed a file onto the table. This scandal is tearing us apart. Investors want answers. Was your marriage a fraud? Adrian's jaw tightened. My private life is not up for debate in this room. Your private life is the company's reputation. Another snapped. If the marriage is fake, you've lied to the shareholders, to the public. Enough. Adrian cut in, his voice sharp as a blade. Silence fell instantly. His eyes swept the room, cold, commanding. Carter Enterprises is built on results, not gossip. If any of you are more interested in headlines than numbers, you're free to resign. No one moved. Adrian gathered his papers, his control flawless, but inside, a storm raged. The company he had built was bleeding, and the woman he couldn't forget was gone. Maya's days blurred into survival again. The cramped apartment, the double shifts at the cafe, the relentless whispers that followed her. Customers recognized her sometimes, whispering that's her, the fake wife. Some sneered, others pitied. One night, exhausted after a 12-hour shift, she curled on her mattress and pulled out her sketchbook. She flipped past unfinished designs, her pencil hovering, but no lines came. The fire that once drove her felt smothered. She whispered into the silence. You were right, Adrian. I don't belong in your world. Tears blurred the page. She shut the book quickly, pressing it to her chest as if it could quiet the ache. Across town, Adrian sat alone in the penthouse study. The city lights spilled across his desk, glinting off the silver frame that held the photograph of his parents and sister. His phone buzzed endless calls from PR, lawyers, investors. He ignored them all. Instead, his eyes lingered on the black folder resting at the edge of the desk. The contract. Signed in her delicate handwriting. Every rule they had made, every line they had drawn to keep feelings at bay, mocked him now. No love, no truth, no future. Adrian pressed the folder shut. For the first time in years, the man who commanded boardrooms, who never flinched under fire, felt powerless. The breaking point came 3 days later. Victoria appeared on a primetime interview, her smile sleek, her voice dripping with false concern. It's heartbreaking, really. Adrian has always been complicated. I warned him about choosing the wrong people. That waitress, well, she saw her chance. Who wouldn't? A month's work, a lifetime of money. But love? Number Adrian Carter doesn't love. He only buys what he needs. The host nodded gravely, feeding the scandal. So you believe the marriage was entirely fake? Victoria's smile widened. I don't need to believe. I know. Maya watched the broadcast on the cafe's old television. Her hands clenched around the rag she was holding, stomach twisting. She could feel the eyes of coworkers on her, pitying, questioning. She couldn't stay. Not here. Not like this. She grabbed her backpack and walked out into the night air, the city pressing down on her. That same night, Adrian faced his sister in the quiet of her new home. The wedding had ended, but the fallout lingered. She looked at him, with disappointment clouding her eyes. "You lied to me, Adrian," she said softly. "You told me you were happy, married, and now the world knows it was all pretend." Adrian's throat tightened. "I wanted to protect you, to keep the focus on your day." "Protect me?" she repeated, pain in her voice. "No, Adrian. You were protecting yourself, from being alone." "Hoey." The words struck harder than any boardroom attack. He had no answer. Maya found herself wandering back to the park where she used to sit with her sketchbook. The bench was cold, the city indifferent. She watched families walk by, couples laughing, friends sharing secrets. For a fleeting moment, she imagined Adrian here, his suit jacket gone, his mask lowered, just a man sitting beside her. She closed her eyes, whispering into the wind. "I wish I'd never said yes. And I wish I'd never said no." Back in his office, Adrian received the final blow. The board threatened a vote of no confidence. Investors demanded a statement. PR insisted he distance himself from Maya. Call it a mistake, move on. But Adrian Carter didn't move on, not from her. For once, he didn't care about the empire. For once, the fight he wanted wasn't for Carter Enterprises, it was for Maya Brooks. The stage was set. The empire teetered, the world doubted, and the woman who had changed him was slipping away. And Adrian Carter, millionaire, CEO, man of steel, was about to make the most reckless choice of his life. Not to save his company, but to save her. The next evening, the city glittered under a restless sky. News vans still lined the streets outside Carter Tower, cameras waiting for a statement that never came. Adrian had ignored them for days, letting the scandal grow, letting the world think he was cornered. But tonight, he wasn't heading to the boardroom. He wasn't sitting in his penthouse drowning in silence. He had something else planned, something reckless, something real. Maya trudged down the steps of the cafe after her shift, exhaustion weighing on her shoulders. Her apron smelled of coffee and grease. Her shoes squeaked from spilled mop water. She was too tired to think, too tired to fight the endless voices that called her a liar, a fraud. But when she turned the corner, her breath froze. A limousine idled at the curb, and standing beside it, in a perfectly tailored suit, was Adrian Carter. The sight of him here in her world, in her streets, was so surreal she thought she might be dreaming. "Adrian?" Her voice cracked. "What are you doing here?" His eyes met hers, steady, determined. "I came to fix what I broke." She shook her head, backing away. "You shouldn't be here. The cameras." "I don't care about the cameras." He stepped closer, his voice low but firm. "I care about you." Her chest tightened. "You don't get to say that now. Not after everything." "I know," his jaw flexed. "But I can't let you keep believing the lie they're selling. You weren't a mistake, Maya. You were the only thing that was real." Tears burned her eyes, but anger flared hotter. "Then why didn't you say that when it mattered? When the whole world was calling me a fraud?" His voice cracked with something raw. "Because I was too proud, too afraid. But not anymore." He reached into his pocket, pulled out the contract folder, the same one he had placed in front of her that night in the cafe. Only now, the pages inside were torn clean through, ripped down the middle. "No more rules, no more contracts. I want the truth." Maya's breath hitched. The street around them blurred as neighbors peeked from windows, as pedestrians slowed to watch. The world was seeing this, and maybe, for once, that was the point. The following evening, the Carter Foundation's annual gala arrived, an event Adrian could not avoid. The press swarmed outside the glittering hotel, waiting for his downfall. Investors, donors, and socialites filled the ballroom, eager for blood. Whispers buzzed as Adrian entered alone. For the first time, he looked almost human without Maya at his side. Vulnerable. The chairman of the board approached, eyes sharp. "The investors want answers, Adrian. Are you going to keep playing games with your reputation?" Adrian stepped onto the stage instead, seizing the microphone. The room hushed instantly. "For weeks, you've read lies," he began, his voice steady, echoing off marble walls. "You've speculated. You've questioned my judgment, my company, my life. Tonight, I'll give you the truth." Every head turned, cameras rolled. "Yes, Adrian said, his gaze sweeping the room. It started as a contract, a mistake born from pride and pressure. But what the papers don't tell you is this. Somewhere in the middle of that mistake, I found the one thing I never thought I'd have. Someone who saw me, not the CEO, not the headlines, just me, Maya Brooks. The room erupted in gasps. Investors stiffened. Tabloids flashed. But Adrian pressed on, his voice unwavering. You can strip me of titles, you can question my leadership, but you will not take away the truth. I love her. And I'll spend every day proving it whether this empire stands or falls. For a long moment, silence stretched across the hall. Then, from the back, a soft voice broke it. Adrian. Maya stood in the doorway, still in her cafe uniform, her hair pulled into a messy bun. She looked so out of place among diamonds and gowns, but to Adrian, she was the only thing that belonged. His chest tightened as she walked forward, eyes locked on his. The crowd parted in stunned silence. She climbed the steps slowly, her voice trembling but clear. You can't just declare love like it's another business deal. I know, Adrian said softly. That's why this time I'm not making a deal. I'm making a promise. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a velvet box. But when he opened it, the ring inside wasn't the glittering stone he could have bought with ease. It was the simple silver band they had used for the fake ceremony, the prop ring. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Adrian held it out, his voice breaking. This was supposed to be fake, but it became the truest thing I've ever known. Maya, will you give me another chance? Not as my contract, not as my shield, but as my wife for real this time. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She shook her head, laughing through the ache. You're impossible. Only when it comes to you. The ballroom seemed to vanish. The board, the press, the cameras, all melted away. All she saw was the man in front of her, raw and unguarded, offering not his empire, but his heart. Maya's hands trembled as she reached for the ring. Yes, the word was soft, but it carried louder than any headline. The room erupted in a mix of gasps, applause, and outrage. But Adrian didn't care. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her as flashes exploded. For once, the story wasn't controlled. For once, the narrative belonged to them. And in that moment, the contract that began with rules ended with love, public, undeniable, and unstoppable. The headlines the next morning were unlike any Adrian Carter had ever seen. Not scandal exposed, not marriage built on lies. Instead, across every front page and flashing on every screen, 3 words repeated like a drumbeat. CEO declares love. Well, paparazzi photos captured it all, the stage lights. Maya in her cafe uniform. Adrian holding out the simple silver band like it was worth more than his empire. The kiss that silenced the room. The moment the cold, untouchable billionaire bared his heart in front of the world. Investors grumbled, board members hissed. But the public? They roared. For every critic, 10 voices rose in defense. Maybe it started as a contract, they said. But did you see his face when he looked at her? That wasn't fake. Maya, meanwhile, woke to a flood of messages. Her phone buzzed endlessly, friends, co-workers, even strangers filling her inbox. Some apologized for doubting her. Others sent blurry screenshots of the broadcast with comments like, "You win, girl." Sitting at the tiny kitchen table of her apartment, Maya scrolled with tears in her eyes. She had expected ridicule, more knives in her back. But instead, the world seemed to be whispering a new word into her ears. Believe. Still, fear lingered. Love declared under chandeliers was one thing. Love tested in silence was another. When the knock came at her door that afternoon, her heart leapt before she even stood. Adrian. He filled the doorway in a simple gray sweater and dark jeans, stripped of the armor of his tailored suits. His eyes searched hers, cautious but hopeful. "Can I come in?" Maya stepped aside, and he crossed the threshold into her world for the first time. The peeling paint, the flickering light bulb, the stack of unopened bills on the counter, he saw it all, but his expression didn't change. He simply looked at her, as if she were the only thing in the room. "You didn't have to do it," she whispered. "The speech, the ring, all of it. You risked everything." He shook his head. "I only risked what didn't matter. This," he reached for her hand, his touch warm, steady. "This matters." Her throat tightened. "And what if it all collapses? The company, the board, your empire. What if you lose it all because of me? His grip tightened. Then let it fall. I'll build again, but not without you. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She had been strong for so long, but in his arms, she finally let herself break. Weeks later, the scandal had cooled. The board's fury dulled under public support and the company's steady rebound. Investors realized Adrian Carter's vulnerability had done the impossible it made. Carter Enterprises more human, more relatable. Donations to the foundation surged, shares stabilized, but Adrian barely noticed. His focus was elsewhere. One evening, he led Maya into a gallery downtown. She frowned as the lights flickered on, revealing walls lined with sketches, her sketches. Dresses, gowns, designs she had hidden in her notebook, now enlarged, framed, displayed like masterpieces. Her breath caught. How? I found your sketchbook, Adrian admitted softly. I shouldn't have, but I did. And I couldn't let them sit unseen. Her chest ached, eyes darting across the room. Adrian, this is insane. They're brilliant, he said firmly. And they're yours. The world deserves to see them. Oh? In the center of the room, a plaque gleamed under the spotlight. The Art of Maya Brooks. Tears blurred her vision. She turned to him, voice breaking. Why would you do this for me? Because you taught me something no one else ever did. His eyes locked on hers, raw and unguarded. That love isn't about power or wealth. It's about truth. And this, he gestured around them, this is your truth. I'm just lucky you chose to share it with me. Her knees almost gave out. She clutched his arm, shaking her head with a tearful laugh. You're impossible. Only when it comes to you, he said again, his voice softer this time. The gallery lights dimmed, replaced by a single spotlight. Adrian turned, and before Maya could understand, he was dropping to one knee. Her heart stopped. He held out a new ring, this one gleaming with a delicate diamond, simple but radiant. The first ring was a contract. The second was a promise. This one, this is forever. The world seemed to hold its breath. Maya Brooks, Adrian whispered, his voice steady despite the emotion burning in his eyes. Will you marry me? No contracts, no lies, just love? She pressed her hands to her mouth, tears spilling freely. Yes, she sobbed. Yes, Adrian. 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring onto her trembling finger, and when he rose, she threw her arms around him. The kiss they shared wasn't for the cameras, wasn't for the crowd. It was only theirs, pure, raw, real. Months later, the wedding was nothing like the gala chaos of his sisters. It was quiet, intimate, held in the very gallery that bore her name. Strings of soft lights twinkled above. Guests sat among her framed sketches, and love hummed in the air like a living thing. When Adrian took her hands at the altar, his voice was low but sure. Best mistake I ever made, he said, echoing the words that had started it all. Maya laughed through tears. Me too. And when they kissed, sealing vows not of contracts but of hearts, the applause that rose was warm, genuine, full of joy. That night, as they stood alone in the gallery, Maya traced her fingers over the glass that framed her very first sketch. Beside it, in another case, sat the silver prop ring, the one that began their story. She smiled, leaning into Adrian's side. Plant and payoff, she murmured, almost teasing. He glanced at her, brow lifting. What? Nothing, she said with a laugh, slipping her arms around him. Just the best mistake we ever made. Now what? He kissed the top of her head, holding her close as the lights glowed around them. And for the first time in their lives, two worlds. Once divided by power and poverty, they were one. Together, forever.